The message came in the early hours of a cold December morning. It was not transmitted through radio waves or satellites. It simply appeared, projected in shimmering golden letters above every major city on Earth. The Galactic Union, an ancient assembly of thousands of civilizations, had discovered Earth, and they had extended an invitation. Humanity stood frozen in shock. Scientists scrambled to decode the message. Politicians argued over its meaning, and news outlets ran endless debates. Was it a trick? A trap? An opportunity? The message, however, was clear. Earth was invited to participate in the Celestial Games, a series of trials designed to test a civilization's strength, intelligence, and spirit. Success would earn Earth a place among the stars. Failure would earn only obscurity and humiliation. Many nations hesitated. Earth was young compared to the vast empires beyond the solar system. Humanity's technology was crude. Their weapons, their ships, their understanding of the universe, all of it was laughably primitive by galactic standards. Some leaders argued that Earth should decline the invitation quietly and hope to be forgotten. But others believed differently. They said humanity had something no other species could match: the will to endure, to adapt, and to fight when all seemed lost. Earth had survived plagues, wars, disasters, and extinction events. They had risen from caves to spaceflight in the blink of a cosmic eye. If the Celestial Games tested more than just technology, if they tested heart and spirit, then humanity had a fighting chance. After days of tense negotiation, a decision was made. A team would be assembled, not just soldiers, but the best representatives of human resilience, marathon runners who could push their bodies beyond natural limits, mountain climbers who had conquered the world's deadliest peaks, combat veterans who had survived against impossible odds, scientists, survivalists, tacticians, each one chosen for a reason. They would not go to impress the galaxy with gleaming armor or genetic perfection. They would go to show what humanity truly was. The preparations were swift and chaotic. The world watched as the chosen few trained in secret facilities, pushing themselves harder than ever before. They studied alien ecosystems, prepared for environmental extremes, and trained in zero-gravity simulations. They learned to rely not on gadgets but on instincts, teamwork, and raw determination. When launch day arrived, the whole planet held its breath. The human delegation, clad in simple gear without embellishments or show, boarded an experimental vessel that had barely passed its first tests. As the ship rose through the atmosphere and vanished into the black sea of space, 1 billion prayers, hopes, and dreams followed them. No one knew what waited for them beyond Earth. No one knew if they would return as heroes or as a forgotten footnote in galactic history. But every man and woman chosen knew one thing for certain. They carried the weight of humanity's pride on their shoulders, and humanity never backed down from a challenge. The human vessel emerged from hyperspace into a system unlike anything Earth had ever imagined. Before them floated an immense structure, a station the size of a small moon, glittering with countless lights and teeming with ships of every design. This was the Arena of Worlds, the site of the Celestial Games. As Earth's delegation disembarked, they walked into a gathering unlike any in history. Representatives from 1,000 civilizations stood watching, their forms alien and magnificent. Towering insectoid warriors clicked their mandibles in amusement. Sleek reptilian elites flicked their tails in mocking curiosity. Ethereal beings made of light and gas pulsed with colors of mild disdain. The humans, in contrast, looked almost laughably simple. Clad in rugged uniforms, carrying basic gear, they seemed like relics from a forgotten era, compared to the sleek armor and shimmering exosuits around them. Whispers spread through the crowd. The humans were too small. Their muscles were too lean. Their hearts beat too fast. Their emotions were written plainly across their faces. There was no hiding the derision. Some spectators openly laughed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. A few even placed open bets on how quickly the humans would fail. Some predicted they would not survive the opening ceremony, let alone the first trial. The announcement of Earth's arrival was met with polite but empty applause. The judges, ancient beings of immense power, barely spared the humans a glance. They had seen thousands of species rise and fall, and Earth did not seem like one worth remembering. As the competitors gathered for the opening ceremony, Earth's delegation stood apart. They did not march in tight formations like the militarized worlds. They did not float gracefully like the psychic species. They simply walked forward, steady and unbothered, their eyes scanning the alien architecture with a mixture of awe and determination. At the center of the Grand Plaza, a massive hologram flared to life. It depicted the coming trials, physical endurance across hostile worlds, battles in shifting environments, tests of intellect under impossible stress, and a final confrontation with forces designed to break even the strongest wills. The other species prepared themselves with confident smiles and lazy certainty. They had no doubt that Earth would crumble quickly, providing a brief moment of entertainment before the real competition began. Some even pitied the humans, seeing them as a curious but doomed novelty. But within the human ranks, there was no fear, no hesitation, only a burning resolve. They had faced extinction many times on their own world. They had fought wars where survival seemed impossible. They had endured when logic said they should fail. And now, faced with the laughter of 1,000 civilizations, they did what humanity had always done best. They smiled. Because Earth's warriors understood something the galaxy did not yet know. The louder the world laughed, the harder humanity fought. And this time, they would fight with everything they had. The opening trial was brutal. A gauntlet unlike anything the humans had ever faced. The competitors were dropped onto a world with a crushing gravity 3 times that of Earth's, surrounded by jagged rocks and deep, sulfurous pits. Acid rain poured from the skies, and violent electrical storms surged through the atmosphere. The goal was simple: reach the central point, retrieve the token, and return to the starting line. The first to complete the task would win. The alien competitors were confident. Their bodies had been genetically perfected for extreme environments. The insectoids had tough, chitinous exoskeletons. The reptilians were built for endurance, with muscles capable of enduring pressure and fatigue. The others were creatures of liquid and energy, able to adapt to almost any situation with ease. And then there were the humans. For a brief moment, there was silence. The humans, armed with nothing more than their natural resilience, their instincts, and basic survival gear, stepped forward. Their bodies ached in the high gravity immediately. The air was thick with chemicals, making each breath feel like fire in their lungs. But they didn't flinch. They didn't hesitate. The first few minutes were chaotic. The humans, unaccustomed to the severe conditions, stumbled and struggled. Their limbs felt heavy, their movements sluggish. Some of the more seasoned warriors fell to their knees in exhaustion, but they got back up. It didn't matter how hard it was. It didn't matter how much pain they were in. Meanwhile, the alien contestants moved with apparent ease. They sprinted, leaped, and glided with almost unnatural grace. The insectoids used their mandibles to burrow through rock, while the reptilians slithered swiftly through the mud. It seemed like the humans were already falling behind, struggling against the environment and their own limitations. But then something strange happened. The humans stopped fighting the gravity. They started moving with it. They adapted. The first human warriors formed a team, each person taking a different role based on their strengths. The mountain climbers led the group, using their knowledge of rough terrain to navigate the jagged rocks. The survival experts identified areas of shelter from the acid storms. The athletes used their endurance to keep the group moving without collapsing. They worked together in perfect harmony, ignoring the crushing weight of the world around them. One by one, the alien competitors began to falter. The insectoids, while fast, began to tire. Their exoskeletons were not designed to withstand prolonged stress under such extreme conditions. The reptilians, though powerful, had not anticipated the toxic air. Their bodies started to slow, their movements less fluid. But the humans, they thrived. Every time one of them stumbled or fell, another was there to help. They didn't have the advantages of their competitors, but they had something far more powerful. They had the will to keep going, even when everything else told them to stop. In the final stretch, when most of the other competitors had dropped out or were too weak to continue, the humans reached the central point. They claimed the token with shaking hands, their bodies battered and bruised, but their eyes burning with determination. They turned back toward the starting line, and though the gravity and the storms fought them every step of the way, they didn't stop. By the time the first human crossed the finish line, the crowd was silent. No cheers, no jeers, just stunned disbelief. Earth had done the impossible. They had survived when everyone thought they wouldn't even make it past the first trial. And when the second human crossed the line, the silence turned into something else. It was awe. A deep, unspoken respect. Humanity had just given the galaxy its first shock. The second trial was something humanity had never faced before. A zero-gravity tactical battle that would test not just physical strength, but intellect and strategy. The competitors were dropped into a massive artificially created arena. A vast, weightless expanse filled with shifting platforms, deadly obstacles, and hidden traps. The goal was simple: outsmart and outmaneuver your opponents while securing the central objective. At first glance, it seemed like an easy victory for the genetically engineered species. The insectoids, with their quick reflexes and advanced senses, should have dominated. The reptilians, with their superior physical prowess, could have crushed their opponents in a straight fight. And the psychic species, capable of manipulating the arena's gravity at will, seemed all but unbeatable. But Earth's warriors had something no one else could predict: ingenuity. They didn't rush into the battle. They didn't rely on speed or strength, but on thinking outside the box. As soon as the battle began, humanity's teams scattered into small groups, their movements deliberate, calculating. They didn't engage in head-to-head combat like the other species. They observed, they analyzed. One group of humans, led by a former Special Forces strategist, found a high vantage point where they could observe the entire arena without being seen. They waited for the other competitors to make the first move, and when they did, it was almost too easy. The insectoids, too focused on their speed, collided with the arena's traps, their hard shells taking the brunt of the damage. The reptilians charged forward, too sure of their strength, but their reckless approach left them exposed to a human ambush. The psychic species, capable of shifting gravity at will, were completely unaware of the fact that the humans had taken the time to study their patterns and knew exactly when and where they would strike. As the first skirmishes unfolded, Earth's warriors used the arena's chaotic structure to their advantage. They lured the enemies into confined spaces, using the weightlessness to dodge attacks and counter with surprising precision. They set traps, creating makeshift weapons from the environment. A few humans used nothing more than modified tools to neutralize alien opponents, outthinking and outmaneuvering them in ways that shocked everyone watching. One human strategist, who had once trained to lead military units through dense forests, recognized the arena's patterns: the floating platforms, the shifting walls, and the gaps between them. They were no different than the tactical environments she'd studied her entire life. As the other teams scrambled to adapt, the humans simply used their brains, executing plans they'd rehearsed in secret simulations. The battle raged on, but humanity's ability to think under pressure became undeniable. Time and again, they found ways to turn the tables, using teamwork and quick thinking to neutralize threats. The insectoids fell into traps. The reptilians were outmaneuvered. The psychic species, brilliant but overconfident, were outwitted by the humans' ability to read and predict their moves. By the time the final objective was reached, a floating beacon high in the center of the arena, only the humans remained. As they claimed victory, They did not celebrate with boastful cries or arrogant gestures. They simply stood together, their faces determined but humble. The arena was silent as the final human warrior touched the beacon, signaling the end of the trial. The other species had been quick to dismiss humanity, but now they could see that Earth's greatest strength wasn't in their genetic advantages or technology. It was their unyielding creativity and willingness to adapt. It was a strength the galaxy had underestimated. And now, it could never be ignored again. The third trial was unlike anything the competitors had faced yet. It wasn't about strength, speed, or tactics. This time, the test was mental. The competitors were led into a vast chamber filled with holographic projections of alien worlds, each more hostile and bizarre than the last. They would have to survive on these alien worlds for a set period of time, relying only on their wits and survival instincts. The environment would change rapidly, with deadly creatures, environmental hazards, and psychological stress designed to break even the most prepared minds. The moment the trial began, the humans immediately noticed the difference. The other species had anticipated the challenge to be physical, but humans were not just survivors of hostile planets. They were survivors of their own history. Earth's warriors had spent centuries in battle, but they had also spent centuries learning how to endure through famine, disease, and loss. They knew what it meant to survive when hope seemed impossible. The first world they were transported to was a barren desert, with scorching heat and violent sandstorms. Most of the other species collapsed almost immediately, their bodies ill-suited for the extreme temperatures. The reptilians, though resilient, grew sluggish as the heat drained their energy. The insectoids, while capable of withstanding intense conditions, struggled to find water in the dry wasteland. But the humans, they took immediate action. They found shelter from the storms and began rationing their water and food with careful precision. One member of the team, an experienced wilderness guide, knew exactly how to conserve resources and keep morale high. The others, though exhausted, followed his lead. They did not panic. They did not give in. They simply adapted. But the true test came when the next world began to shift. The desert faded into a lush, toxic jungle, thick with poisonous plants and aggressive wildlife. The air was heavy with spores that caused hallucinations and dizziness. Creatures with sharp teeth and claws prowled in the shadows, hunting anything that moved. It was a nightmare, and for most species, it was an easy excuse to give up. The reptilians, though strong, were not immune to the mental strain. The psychic species, usually so capable of controlling their surroundings, struggled to maintain their focus. Even the insectoids, with their natural resilience, found it difficult to fight both the environment and their own growing fear. But the humans refused to break. They relied on their training in survival situations, using their knowledge of Earth's own dangerous ecosystems to find safety. They used simple techniques, making shelters from local plants, creating makeshift weapons to defend themselves, and relying on their team to keep each other focused. When one member began to show signs of panic, another would step in with calm words, reminding them that they were all in this together. Despite the hallucinations, the growing fatigue, and the sense of isolation, the humans kept moving. They didn't quit when things got tough. They didn't lose their minds to fear or fatigue. They simply pressed on. Every time one of them faltered, the rest lifted them up. By the time the trial ended, the humans had survived the longest in the jungle, showing not just physical resilience, but a mental strength no one had anticipated. They had beaten the odds by simply refusing to give up, even when everything around them seemed designed to break them. As they returned to the main chamber, there were no cheers, no applause, just silence. The other species had expected the humans to falter, to lose their grip, to succumb to the impossible. But they didn't. The humans had shown something far more powerful than physical superiority or intelligence. They had shown that their greatest strength was their ability to endure, to survive, and to never, ever give up. And in that moment, the galaxy began to understand something they had never considered. Earth's warriors weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival. The final trial was unlike any of the others. The competitors had fought environmental extremes, outwitted their opponents, and endured mental breakdowns. But now, they faced a test of raw, primal survival, one that no species had ever faced before. The arena transformed into a massive, uncharted wilderness, dark and foreboding. A cold wind howled through the trees as the competitors were split into small teams and given no instructions other than one: survive. The sky above was lit with violent flashes of lightning, the ground trembling with every echoing footstep. And then it appeared, the beast. It was a creature born of nightmares, a fusion of biological weaponry and ancient terror. Towering above the ground, its sleek, armored body shimmered with a deadly, otherworldly sheen. Its eyes glowed like molten lava, its razor-sharp claws glinting in the storm. The beast was designed to hunt, to track, and to kill, and it would hunt the competitors down, one by one, until only one remained. As soon as the beast's presence was known, chaos erupted. The insectoids, whose tough exoskeletons had allowed them to survive the earlier trials, charged forward, their mandibles clicking in fury. The reptilians, powerful and fast, tried to outmaneuver the creature with brute force. The psychic species used their abilities to shift the environment around them, hoping to slow the creature's attack. But none of it worked. The beast was faster than any predator they had encountered, and stronger than anything they had faced before. It tore through the alien forces like paper, its massive claws rending through armor and flesh with ease. The psychic species tried to halt its movement with their minds, but the beast simply shrugged off their efforts, its mind impervious to their influence. It was then that the humans realized something crucial. The beast didn't care about power or skill. It didn't respect tactics or technology. It cared only about survival, its own. And if the humans were going to survive, they would have to do the same. They couldn't rely on brute force or their wits alone. They would have to think differently. Instead of charging in headfirst, the humans used the environment to their advantage. They set traps, laid false trails, and lured the beast into areas where it couldn't use its size to its advantage. They worked together, using every scrap of their knowledge to weaken the creature bit by bit. One of the humans, an expert in tracking and hunting, noticed that the beast relied heavily on sound and scent to track its prey. He used this knowledge to create a distraction, leading the beast into a narrow canyon where it was forced to fight within confined spaces. The human warriors, battered and worn, worked quickly to flank the creature. When the final blow came, it wasn't the work of a single human. It was the combined effort of a team who had learned to rely on each other, to think, and act as one. They didn't overpower the beast with strength or speed. They outwitted it, trapping it long enough to deliver a fatal blow. And when the creature finally collapsed to the ground, the arena fell silent. The other species stood in awe. The humans, who had been written off as weak and incapable, had done the impossible. They had taken down the beast, a creature feared by civilizations across the galaxy. In that moment, it became clear. Humanity was not just a species of survivors. They were a species of fighters, willing to sacrifice everything for victory, willing to adapt, to learn, and to push forward no matter the odds. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the humans stood victorious, their bodies bruised and bloodied, but their spirits unbroken. For centuries, civilizations had tested their might and intellect in the celestial games, expecting only the strongest to survive. When Earth had arrived, many had dismissed them as naive, fragile creatures with little hope of competing. Yet here they were, standing tall after defeating the legendary beast, a creature that had never been defeated in the history of the games. The silence lasted long enough to be uncomfortable. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Union, the eyes of the galaxy were focused entirely on Earth. No longer were they the underdogs. No longer were they the curious, naive species that others could laugh at and dismiss. The humans stood in the center of the arena, bruised but unbroken, their faces grim but resolute. The alien species, once so sure of their superiority, now looked at them with something new: respect. It wasn't the kind of respect earned through physical prowess or advanced technology. It was the respect given to those who had proven their will to survive, no matter the odds. The judges, ancient beings of incomprehensible power, finally spoke. Their voices echoed through the arena, calm and authoritative, yet carrying a hint of awe. "Earth," they said, "you have proven something that we, and the rest of the galaxy, have forgotten. The strength of a species is not determined by its power, nor by its technology. It is defined by its will to endure, to survive, to adapt." The words echoed in the minds of every being present. For so long, the Galactic Union had valued intelligence, strength, and precision. But Earth had shown that there was something even more important: the human spirit, the human ability to fight not just with their hands, but with their hearts, to keep pushing forward even when the world was against them. The humans' victory in the games did not just grant them a place among the stars. It marked the beginning of a new era, one where Earth would not be seen as an outsider, but as an equal. The galaxy now knew what humanity was capable of: not just survival, but thriving in the face of impossible odds. But the weight of that victory was not lost on the humans. As they stood in the arena, the true magnitude of what they had accomplished began to sink in. They had done more than survive the games. They had earned the respect of species that had never once considered them worthy of it. They had proven that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. For the first time, the human warriors looked to each other, not with pride or arrogance, but with something deeper. It was the understanding that this victory was not just theirs. It was the victory of all who had ever fought for survival, for freedom, for a place in the universe. And it was the beginning of something far greater than they could have ever imagined. As the final ceremony began, the humans stood shoulder to shoulder, united not just by their victory, but by the knowledge that they had changed the course of history. They had proven that Earth's warriors were more than just survivors. They were fighters, and the galaxy would never forget them. The final ceremony began in a hushed, reverent silence. The humans had done the unimaginable. Their victory in the Celestial Games had shaken the very foundations of the Galactic Union. What had begun as an event to entertain the galaxy's most powerful and advanced civilizations had turned into a moment of profound realization. The underdog species, Earth, had not only survived. They had thrived. They had conquered the impossible, and in doing so, they had redefined what strength meant in the eyes of the universe. As the humans gathered before the ancient judges, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. There was no arrogance in their posture, no smugness in their eyes. Their victory had come at a great cost: the bruises, the blood, the tears, but it had also come with an overwhelming sense of unity. They had learned to trust one another, to push each other to their limits, and to adapt in ways no one had thought possible. The judges, whose existence spanned millennia, had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. But they had never encountered a species like humanity. In all their wisdom, they had come to a unanimous decision. "Earth," the lead judge intoned, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to bend space itself, "you have earned not only victory, but our respect. The galaxy will never forget your strength, your resilience, and your spirit. Your species has shown that the greatest power in the universe lies not in technology, nor in superior genetics, but in the unbreakable will to endure." The words struck like a thunderclap. The humans stood still, their hearts beating in unison. In that moment, they knew that everything had changed. No longer would they be considered a lesser species. No longer would their struggles be dismissed as insignificant. Earth's place among the stars had been earned through sheer determination and an unyielding belief that they could overcome any challenge. The arena was filled with a wave of energy as the other species began to applaud, the sound reverberating across the vast chamber. For the first time, Earth was seen not as a curiosity or a novelty, but as an equal, a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had learned something crucial. To underestimate humanity was to invite disaster. As the applause rang out, the humans exchanged looks, not of triumph, but of understanding. They had fought for survival, but they had also fought for something greater. Their place in the galaxy, their right to stand shoulder to shoulder with the most powerful and ancient species in the universe. The final prize of the games was not just a trophy or a title. It was something far more valuable: a voice. Earth would now have a say in the future of the galaxy. Their warriors had proven that no matter how small, how insignificant a species might seem, they could stand up against the impossible and emerge victorious. As they left the arena, the humans did not rush to celebrate. They had accomplished something no one thought possible, but they also knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey was far from over. The galaxy had taken notice of them, and now, humanity's true test would begin. Not to survive, but to thrive and shape the future they had won. The dawn of a new era had arrived.